Do you know more about what these documents may say about President Trump or other powerful politicians that the public does not know yet?
Yeah, there's still more that committee staff is going through and determining what needs to be redacted before the release. And then we always consult with leadership on the Republican side as well before any drops are made public. And I fully anticipate that we will receive more, at least from the estate of Epstein. It does not seem like the Department of Justice has really been inclined to actually participate, which is one reason that we're talking about this discharge petition and talking about this vote. It's because we need something with a little bit more fire behind it to hopefully get the Department of Justice to finally start to cooperate.
Why is it that Epstein's estate, I mean, the Todd Blanche, the president's deputy attorney general now, he wrote this morning that when he went to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, quite a moment, that law enforcement didn't have the materials that Epstein's estate hid for years and only just provided to Congress. Why is he saying this now, and why is the estate talking to Congress if not to the DOJ?
Have you ever heard of CYA? That's exactly what we've got going on. And it was interesting because you made a Freudian slip. You said the president's attorney. You're right. That's who he is.
I should have said former personal attorney.
That's who he is, though. Like, I'm sticking with it. I get what you got to say. But at the end of the day, that's what he's been trying to do. He's been trying to do Trump's bidding. He has not been acting like anyone's attorney general. And we know that when it comes down to whether you're the deputy or whether you are, say, Pam Bondi, the actual AG, you are supposed to be the people's attorney. But she has decided that she wants to neglect the people and do whatever it is that Trump wants her to do, along with Todd Blanche. So here it is. He's like, well, I didn't have all the information. Well, sir, did you try to get the rest of the information? Do we know for sure that the Department of Justice didn't have this information? And if they didn't have this information, do we know whether or not they actually deleted this information? Do we know that there was a thorough investigation? Do we know whether or not the investigation had concluded? These are all questions that we need answers to, but we can't get them when you're not cooperating. So we don't know what the DOJ has, nor what it is that the DOJ potentially was trying to do. Considering that the president right now is trying to obstruct on some very basics of let's just get a subpoena that says release all the information, I wouldn't be surprised, just like he obstructed the prosecution of one of his henchmen who took $50,000 in taxpayer dollars from undercover officers. I wouldn't be surprised if he sent a message and said, stop investigating. We're done with this. Epstein's dead. I don't want to hear anything else about it.
Do you have any evidence of that claim?
I have no idea. No, that's the whole point. I have no information. And that's why we need these files to be released, because we are looking for transparency, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent. Listen, if people decide that they want to continue to support a person who may be a pedophile himself, or a person who obviously is covering for pedophiles, that's on them. But they should know at least the devil that they have decided to pick.
We saw at the top of the show a number of, at the time, Donald Trump surrogates and supporters, including his son and his vice presidential nominee, say that the Epstein files should be released. Obviously, there was a Democrat who was president at the time, Joe Biden. Why were Democrats not louder at that time about this release?
So a couple of things. Number one, you had pending litigation. So we're not the ones that went out making some campaign promises. In fact, the vast majority of Democrats had been campaigning on things such as affordability. I know that Kamala Harris had an actual plan so that people wouldn't necessarily be stuck in a mortgage for 50 years, but instead she wanted to make sure that they could have $25,000 down payment so that they could move into homes and make life overall more affordable. So we were focused on the bread and butter issues. This was a campaign issue of his. But while there was pending litigation, if you look at when Maxwell was finally convicted, and honestly, she just finished probably one of her last appeals here recently, you are not usually in the middle of an active case and then you say, oh, yes, we're going to release everything. That's not how that goes. So she was prosecuted under the Biden-Harris administration. So no, this was not something to do at that point in time. At this point in time, it's clear that they are not interested in going forward with any additional prosecutions, in addition to the fact that the survivors have come forward. They are begging Congress to do this. This is not something that the survivors were necessarily doing at that time. They were still believing in the system and hoping that it would work.
What's your sense? The survivors obviously have been on Capitol Hill, and of course, many of them endured just horrific things. They have said it should not be on them to provide a list
Yes.
of the people that they encountered. Do you, in the course of your work on the committee and perhaps discussions with them, have any understanding or thinking that they may change their position on that we may see a list from them?
I don't think so. Let me tell you something. There's been recent reporting where MAGA seems to be upset because I have to pay for security. I'm actually upset that I have to pay for security as well. The threats that come with being on the other side of this president are significant and serious. And so when you have a list of women and they are the ones that are making these claims, for anybody that doesn't want to believe the truth, then they will start to go after them. They will start to threaten their families. It would be better if we had the contemporaneous reports from law enforcement where they called in at those moments and gave the reports of what was happening. It's kind of like the birthday letter that he wants to pretend is a hoax. That was a contemporaneous writing at that time. This was not produced in real time, and they don't want it to be seen as partisan or political. They just want people to believe in the facts. And so if it is that they reported this, maybe even before he was president, then maybe people will actually believe it versus the hate that they get thrown at them in this moment. So no, I don't think that they'll do it. I think it's the smartest thing that they can do for safety. It is sad that we have survivors that feel like they can't be safe from an American president and his cronies.
We are going to talk to Stacey Williams, who is Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend. She says she was groped by Donald Trump back in 1993 in Trump Tower. Stacey, thank you so much for being with us. Tell me about what happened to you.
Yes, I dated Jeffrey Epstein very briefly in 1983. And, his best friend at that time was Donald Trump. They had a very close friendship. And one day I was on a walk with Jeffrey and he said, let's stop in and see Donald in his office at Trump Tower. And I said, okay. And we walked in there and Trump proceeded to grope me right outside of his office door while Jeffrey just stood there and watched. His hands were all over my body, and it was very odd because the two of them were talking about, something not about the groping. They were having a conversation. I don't remember what it was about, and smiling, continuing on with their conversation as if the groping wasn't happening, which caused me to sort of freeze up and be utterly confused about what was going on. After the incident, and it was, very brief, just a couple of minutes, we took the elevator, down, and Jeffrey's energy was very dark and sort of stormy and angry, and we got it on the street, and he just ranted at me and asked me, he kept saying, why did you let him do that? Why did you let him do that? And I remember being utterly confused, like, yeah, why did I? What just happened? And as I came into my body, I got the sense that the whole thing was coordinated.
Coordinated? Why do you think coordinated if he was asking you why you let him do it?
Well, Jeffrey, I had told him many times that, I was very combative when men would grope me or touch me or assault me, whether they were photographers from the industry or men on the streets of Paris or whatever it was, and that I had been reprimanded by a couple of agents for being, combative, which was basically just standing up to sexual assault in studios. And so my sense is that I was walked in there as sort of a challenge to see if Trump would do what he has admitted to doing to women, which is grabbing them, the Access Hollywood tape, he talked about it, his own words, and then what he did to me and, what the other, 27 and counting women he has touched without consent have shared. So I think it was a challenge, and they were such close friends. These are the kind of creepy, misogynistic games they were up to together.
What's your reaction to the emails that we're discovering today?
My reaction is they make total sense. They're completely familiar. They were very close. And, the other reaction is that's the intellectual. I'll say the emotional is this like, every time there's a new wave of news about this crazy story, I'm reminded of what the two of them did to me together. and it makes me sick.
The breadth of people speaking out. That's what's so fascinating about this Trump-Epstein story. It's not just one type of person. It's the people directly affected, the people who knew him, knew Jeff, knew what was happening. They're speaking out. Democrats, of course, are speaking out. One, because I think they sincerely believe it. But even if you're cynical, it's like, painting the president of the opposite party as a freakazoid is good politics. But what's really interesting is you see Republicans speaking out in ways direct and indirect, including some MAGA types who are standing up to Trump. MAGA types who would have every incentive out of loyalty, fear, ideology to just either side with Trump or even just sort of take a step back, but by sort of staying neutral, defend Trump by default. They're not. And I think that's what's really telling here. And all these pictures we've been seeing, all the emails we've been seeing, there's photographs of these emails, right? You and I haven't been given the actual emails, right? We've been given photographs of the emails. But all these other pictures, all the pictures that flood out, of Trump and Epstein at these parties that have been shared, these women coming forward saying, oh yeah, I've seen them. And these images of these women, these moving images, these moving pictures of these women on the news, sharing their stories yet again. This is a turning point moment in American politics. It's a reckoning moment for rich men of all parties, because we know that Jeff had buddies across the political spectrum, many of them on the right and the center, few on the left, but he had friends in high places. He had friends in high places. Friends that either knew what he was doing and said nothing. Some friends who probably didn't know what he was doing, but he made friends with them to kind of give his name credibility. But this was a man that was with his tentacles weaved into every nook and cranny in elite American society. And now, even though it's years after he passed away in the prison, where I don't think it was accidental, I don't think it was on his own accord, that's my opinion. Years after, we're finally getting consequences for more than just a couple people.